Hey everyone, welcome to this special edition of Behind the Grind Show. Today we're sitting with DC Reeves, who we've had on before. He's the Chief Entrepreneurship Officer of the Spring Entrepreneur Hub, and he is the President and Co-founder of Perfect Plain and Garden and Grain. And we're bringing you this special episode just to give you a little up-to-date background on everything that's going on with COVID-19 and how you're operating your business and how you should be operating your business.
Yeah.
DC, how are you going today?
Good. Thanks
I guess
for
it's
having
not the morning.
Well, it's hard to keep track anymore, depending on
Right,
where
what
you're
day
working.
is it, where
I have no idea where I am, but thanks for the opportunity, and I appreciate everything that you guys are doing. And the interviews have been great, and it's become a great resource. I know people around town talking about the value of learning from other people, and so I appreciate you guys giving that platform to also, as you said, I think this is a special case in the fact that there's just so many moving parts right now and so much unknown for businesses that we want to, and at the Spring, we really want to be the front door for entrepreneurship, and our entire mission that we built well before COVID-19 was, or that we had thought about, is how do we best service the local small businesses and help them raise the wage index and hire more people, and it's a tactic to accomplish those things. So
It's kind of great timing.
Right. As I say, well, no better time than now in terms of being there when businesses need us. So like I said, I appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk about some of the things that are out there, and because it is timely, and it is there's things that are available now that may not be available in a week. That are resources for businesses, and I know we'll get into that, but I appreciate the opportunity to let us try to have a touch point with every business that's out there.
Yeah, so how about you give the listener just a little background on the Spring before we get rolling?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So it's under the umbrella of Studer Community Institute, and it's autonomous in a lot of ways. I mean, it is it's completely focused on the small business in Pensacola, and it really happens through three different clear, concise tracks. One is mentorship, which is an MIT mentorship program that was scheduled to start, as a matter of fact, probably in about 3 days, but obviously that will be put on hold. We're waiting on mentor training and MIT to be able to come back down. So that will definitely happen, but just TBD. That was supposed to be the first thing that the Spring implemented, was this MIT mentorship program. The second thing, which now is becoming the first, is to be, as we call it, triage. We want to help every small business, to help every small business as best we can. And that doesn't mean that I don't have all the answers. Gracie, our entrepreneur coordinator, does a great job. She doesn't have all the answers.
Right.
What we're there for is, if we've got an answer, we're going to help you, but we probably know who does have an answer if we don't. And we have relationships with everybody in our entrepreneurial ecosystem to get you to the right place. So typically, we should be able to hear your issue, your concern, and based on the stage of your business and what your question is, we have all sorts of resources that we've built up of people that can help. And so that was really going to be second. We were going to have our physical space on Garden Street, and with a little bit of shared desk space and kind of a cool vibe down on the first floor of the old SunTrust building. That was going to launch in summer. That's still the case for the physical space, but now has the digital platform, so to speak, the outreach has begun. That we've obviously immediately started trying to provide expertise. We've been doing webinars. We've been doing one-on-one consultation. I've been probably talking to 3 companies a day, locally, 2 to 3 companies a day, and just, lots of questions about grants and stuff, again, we can talk about too, but trying to hit as many people as we can and help as many people as we can. And I actually just had a roundtable, a CEO roundtable with 9 companies this morning. And so that has now become our primary sole focus at the Spring. The third thing is an accelerator program, which will come this fall. That's really focused on high growth potential organizations. But interestingly enough, and it's called G-Beta, and if you've been following us the last couple of days, we co-sponsored an emergency response program, which is 5 webinars over 2 weeks it's going on right now. If you go to thespringpensacola.com, we already have the 2 that have happened already archived. I spoke with an accountant for an hour specifically on PPP, disaster loans, bridge loans, answered every question there is out there, sole proprietor, 1099, what happens with this, what happens with that. I had that on Wednesday, and so that's already on our website as well. And then we have 3 more of those coming, as of the April 9th. So, but even if you listen to this a week down the road, just know that all of that content, Quentin is doing one Friday on how to restart your business. We have one on health and wellness coming up. We have another one on the CARES Act and the Paycheck Protection, because things change so fast. We did one a week ago. Well, there's going to be brand new information in that a week from now, and all the different rules. So even though that's the last thing on the Springs list, it's kind of cool because they've already jumped into our community generator based in Milwaukee and said, how can we help them? So we've partnered with them to bring that content as well. So those are those 3 buckets of the spring, but I know, and that's what the majority of what we'll talk about today is truly focused on outreach and expertise for our local small businesses.
And on Instagram, you can find the Spring at the Spring Pensacola.
Right.
So now let's transition into SBA loans, all that good stuff. A lot of our followers are going to be mostly, we have a lot of people with side hustles, a lot of startups. We have a lot of startups that follow us.
Yep.
So
Definitely.
let's start with more like small business owners,
Sure.
startups, and go from there.
Sure. Okay. So I'll try not to. I mean, most people at this point even have either applied for one or at least inquired and gotten some information. So I won't start at the very beginning.
Right.
If you don't know what we're talking about Paycheck Protection, about EIDL as they're calling the Emergency Disaster Loan Program, the federal one through the SBA, or at the state level, the Disaster Bridge Loan, which is up to $100,000 loan for 1 year, interest-free. If you don't know anything about any of those, go to thespringpensacola.com. There's a COVID-19 reference page. You got links to all of that stuff. So I'll spare us kind of the start of exactly what, the details of what each one of those are. But I'll say this, with startups, if the majority of the audience is startups, sole proprietors, single employee companies, perhaps even there's somebody listening out there who's a 1099 employee that counts on gigs, a florist that has wedding cancels. Exactly. There is relief out there for you. Just because you're hearing that PPP is for small businesses, and that is true, the metrics may be different, the ratio of dollars you get may be different, how things are measured may be different. But please understand that, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're a 1099 employee. That means, so if we hire a DJ at Perfect Plain, if we hire somebody to do karaoke at Perfect Plain, they're 1099. They don't withhold tax in their check or anything like that. We write them a check, and it's their job to file their taxes and their expenses at the end of the year, right? So to illustrate to you why I say there's opportunity out there for you is, for me as a small business, when I calculated our Paycheck Protection, we had it's 2.5 times of our payroll. We cannot count 1099, and the sole reason understandably, because again, I didn't take them on as employees. I'm not paying their payroll taxes. So you don't get to double dip, because the idea is those 1099 employees are going to have an opportunity to file for damages themselves. Yeah. So the government wasn't going to let me take credit for Jimmy coming in and DJing one night, and then also Jimmy file and on the same damages, right? And so as I say, don't think because you're a single employee company or let's say you're new. That question has come up a lot. February 15th for Paycheck Protection is a magic date in a lot of ways in terms of whether you're established. In the case of Perfect Plain, it's when they measure how many employees I'm retaining, they use February 15th as the day. Okay. How many employees did DC have at Perfect Plain on February 15th? That's the magic day, right? And then keeping 75% of that. So, I challenge anybody to reach out to their accountant or reach out to their banker. Certainly reach out to us, and we can try to connect you if you don't have those resources. And we will make sure that, if there is something out there available for you, that we'll make sure that we connect you. But in essence, the Paycheck Protection Program is you are taking out a loan, and then the government is willing, if you use it on the 4 key things: utilities, rent, the interest on just your mortgage, not on any loan that you have, not a car loan, but the interest on your mortgage, and payroll. Any of those 4 things, let's say Perfect Plain gets a $100,000 loan. It begins as a loan. It does not say here's free money. You sign a loan document just like you normally do. The government does not require you to put collateral down. They don't require a personal guarantee, which is very different than normal. But as those 4 buckets accrue during an 8-week period, so Perfect Plain has 8 weeks to accrue expenses in this window, when it gets funded. Anything that falls in those buckets and needs to be documented, listen very carefully to that. Do not put it in a separate account if you get a PPP. That's my number 1 piece of advice. And so you can easily document what you're spending it on.
Yeah.
So for 8 weeks, you get that any of those expenses will be forgiven by the government. So whatever's left is still a loan. Of course, you can pay that right back, whatever you have left. But that's the immense value of Paycheck Protection for small businesses and small companies. That's the value. Is you've got to be able to, you've got to be able to document all that stuff, and it is a lot of work. But I mean, think about that. Ultimately, the government's saying, "Hey, look, we're willing to basically pay your payroll for a couple months to keep people on." So it's super valuable. We haven't really seen anything like it, and I couldn't suggest strongly enough for people to make sure that they're applying for it. And the money is not forever either. You need to get all your documents in order, and you need to be reaching out to your banker. The Paycheck Protection goes through your bank. You don't file for it on your own. It's got to go through a lending institution. I think that's the number 1 that people really need to say is, do I qualify for PPP?
Yeah.
And if I do, that's the one you really need to be hightailing on, I think, right now.
Okay. And let's, we talked about this a little bit before we got started, but say you're an LLC, maybe a single member LLC, and you don't necessarily have a payroll. Maybe you're not giving yourself a salary. You just, every time you get paid, maybe you give yourself a certain percentage of that.
Right.
So someone like that, how would this affect them?
Yeah, so what happens is there's different scenarios for everything. I will say this, I do know that they are eligible. Again, if you've been established since February 15th even, when they calculated Perfect Plain's Paycheck Protection number, they, of course, since we've been an established business, they used 12 months of 2019. That's how it was calculated. So if you've been open that long, that's how they calculate it. But they do make exceptions for new businesses, and they'll at least take whatever you've already had. Gotcha. If that means January and February, December, January and February, there are some exceptions to it. I do know that there are some additional complications if you're brand new. Obviously, you need to be able to show some kind of income. If you open February 14th and you haven't made a sale yet, right. Government can't be like, hey, sorry, here's $25,000. We're just going to give you something. Yeah. You'll have to show some version of either a payroll, but you are not eliminated if Jimmy starts a company on February 1st and he's had sales. You can still show, and there will be some potential aid for you, even if it's a distribution scenario. And that it doesn't require that Jimmy designated, hey, I'm paying myself $80,000 a year. The only really salary stipulation on the other end is it also caps at $100,000. So if you're a successful big company out there and you've got a lot of 6-figure employees, you can't get credit on that equation. It caps at $100,000 for every employee. So you can't factor in somebody who makes $500,000 into your equation. Of course, it caps at $10 million. But I reiterate, to go back to the I cannot stress enough the urgency. If you are interested in this, there is nothing more important to do right now. I promise you. Short of taking care of the health of your employees or your family, they attributed $350 billion to this. I think probably through lobbying or other sources, that number of small business got bumped up to 500 employees. Then it became, it's less than 500 employees at any given location. So that's every franchise. Right. That's everyone. and it's capped at 10 million. Now you do the math that 30 million businesses qualify for PPP in the United States, and there's $350 billion. My math's not good, but what I'm talking about, that is a fraction of what the claims are going to be.
Right.
And so there's already talk of, I think Marco Rubio's already come out and said to put another 250 billion towards it, which is still going to be a drop in the bucket. They're going to have some major issues, or they're going to run out of money in this program.
Yeah.
So I've heard already that the funds for the Florida disaster loan, and I can talk about that. I won't spend a lot of time on it because of what I'm about to tell you, which is I've heard that the funds have even dried up or getting close to drying up on the disaster loan side. They may put more money in it, so that's why I'll mention it. But chances are, if you aren't applying for it, like the second you're listening to this, and you need to check with the SBDC, that's who is handling those. They may not even be there at all. But the Florida disaster loan is up to $100,000 loan, 0% interest, 1 year. And the idea behind that is, it's like they call it, it's a bridge loan. It is let's get you from today. If you got payroll problems, you've got cash flow issues. And then after 1 year, the loan goes to 12%. Well, you're going to refinance that. I mean, that's an absurd number to pay, but they want that. They intentionally are saying, hey, after a year, you're getting the bank to finance it or something else. But it's hard to beat 0% money.
Right.
The SBA loan is not that. It's 3.75%, even though it's a great program, an awesome program. It's 0% money. And so same thing. What is there to lose? Worst case, you get the loan, you got 50 grand sitting in a bank account, you never touch it, you give it back on the 365th day of the loan, 364th day of your loan, then great. Then at least you had that comfort in the back of your mind that you had some funds to invest with. So I really say that the PPP is if you're out there and you haven't done any of this, or you've got all three of these in front of you and you don't know where to go, the PPP is the number. If you qualify for it, should be the first thing you attack. I think the second thing, if you're in Florida, should be the disaster loan. And then there are some specific needs out there for people to look at that EIDL. But that's really, probably more suited for larger companies, because you could borrow $500,000. You could borrow, a small company, that's not their need. It's cash right now, or it's paycheck protection to keep employees on. Those are much more for your audience and our audience at the spring. Those, bucket 1 and bucket 3 are clearly the more valuable tools, I think, to help your business get through this.
Yeah, and so for the PPP, is that just going to SBA's website, or should you just call your bank?
Yeah, you call your bank, and I usually say that, and people say, well, wait a second, I don't have a loan, I'm a single employee company. Well, call who's got your bank, checking account, or your personal. Honestly, I would call the person who even if it was my personal bank, if I had a better relationship with somebody in that building than I do at where even my commercial bank is. And I'm really speaking to young companies, eventually you're with someone a long time, you kind of get to know them. But, and Hancock, to shout out to them, Hancock Whitney did a great job with us, and they've been very supportive through all this. But I would find the person, the banker the best. And because they are all getting inundated with every business in Pensacola is calling their bank and saying, get my application in. So where are you going to naturally go? I don't blame them. I mean, they're going to go to their most loyal customers, people they do the most business with. I mean, it's not understandable. Somebody random that they don't even do business with, and then it's a lot of trouble. And remember, these banks aren't making, really appreciate your banker. I mean, they're not making any money on that. I shouldn't say any, but this is not the same as them writing conventional loans and the potential to make money. They're doing this basically kind of as a service because they need to be the agency, that third party for the SBA.
Yeah.
Specifically on the paycheck protection side. Both of the other programs you can apply for yourself.
Okay.
Even the other SBA program and the disaster loan, you do that on your own. It's only these 7A loans for paycheck protection where you have to go through a bank.
Got it.
As you're sitting down with, you've mentioned 3 or 4 companies a day.
Yeah.
What have been the most prevalent concerns outside of PPP and supporting the employees of said companies? What are
obviously most questions around the PPP, but I'll say this: an extension of that is a lot of times it's about the architecture of PPP and what is the smartest thing for a business to do. Meaning, hey, we've been given this, this opportunity. Does it make sense to cut staff here, lay someone off here? The best example is, I'll think of the exact term. It's the employee retention tax credit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to cut to the chase on it, this employee retention tax credit pays 50% of your salary as long as you've lost half your business or more. Okay. So think of a nail salon, a hair salon, mm-hmm. somebody like that. Perfect Plain is kind of on the teetering, because we still can be in business. So if we're probably at about half sales right now, so it'd be close. But if you can prove you've lost at least half of your revenue, now paycheck protection requires you to keep 75% of your employees on, all that. This credit does not. Mm. What they're saying is, if you've basically been severely interrupted or shut down, and you don't have anything, for anybody to do, right. Yeah, I'd love to keep my employees on, but like, what am I going to have to do?
Right.
So maybe I'll use my own example. If Perfect Plain was not permitted to be doing anything, kind of difficult to have bartenders that aren't allowed to come in the building,
right.
because we're shut down, and so this employee retention tax credit, it's not getting near the notoriety that PPP is. Everybody knows about that, but in certain cases, you have to choose one or the other.
Okay, so there's no
correct. That's the key. So everybody's heard of PPP, but and rightfully so. In most cases, it is the more lucrative option. But I think of a small business that has employees that they can't keep on, they can't retain. Well, heck, you're going to have a pretty hard time doing PPP if you can't. How are you going to bring people? You get the loan today. Yeah. Nail salon's still closed. Hair salon is still closed. The only option you have is to bring everybody on payroll to do nothing. Literally just pay them. To give because it's going to be forgiven money. In some cases, it might be more valuable. Let's say a company were to keep their 2 or 3, salaried managers. Well, those 2 or 3 people they keep on, half of their salary is paid by the government. So it's 50%, 50 cents on the dollar, but there's no requirement to keep people around and that kind of thing. So for certain businesses, certain sizes, again, everybody's different, and I stress, obviously check on this yourself, talk with your banker, your accountant. They can help you. Accountants can actually run numbers on this. They can say, is it more valuable? Most times you can just look at it and say, okay, well, this one's more valuable and PPP is more valuable. Some places, if you've been shut down, it's going to be close, depending on who you still are retaining and keeping on. And the reason is the retention credit, if you've lost half your sales, it'll run through December. So much long, PPP is 8 weeks, so you can get that 50, it's only 50 cents on the dollar, but you can get that credit for much longer if you are long to come back and recover from this. So that's what I mean. You ask about questions, it's how people should react to these new programs is by far the number one question we're getting is, hey, I've laid everybody off. What's going to happen with PPP? How do I keep 75% of my people on if I've laid everybody off? When do I need to have them back? Mm-hmm. Well, you need to have them back when the account's funded, when that 8-week thing opens. And if you have applied for it, your 8 weeks begin when you get funded. That's the latest clarity. That could change. But when your bank account, when that money hits your bank account, that is day one of your 8-week window to spend that money in paycheck protection. So as I said, there's just all different avenues. Everybody's got different situations, but that's what I think every business really needs to be focused on. And as I said, I had a webinar with an accountant. I had a webinar with Scott Remington from Clark Partington when this legislation came out, and he outlined every single piece of that legislation and all the different details, the different nuances. So all that content's available if you are playing catch up. And if you have applied, make sure you're keeping an eye on check the Google News feed on PPP or CARES Act. Things are changing all the time. And the last thing, and I'll shut up, is that understand I think the smartest way to navigate. I talked with Randall Wells, who works with Bubba Watson as CFO for Studer Family Companies for over an hour. He was gracious with his time the other day, and there's so many unknowns. I talked about this with you guys before. let's say in the Paycheck Protection Act, what stops the business owner from the last day of my window, just there's $25,000 left in the account, I pay myself $25,000. Yeah, you pay the taxes on it and all that, but what would stop you from doing that? Well, as the three of us sit here today, nothing. In 2 weeks, when people, look back at any time in history, you look at BP, you look at recession programs, you look at any of those things, as Randall pointed out, in that what happens is usually it comes along when it becomes forgiveness time, and they're looking saying, what do we owe you? What do you owe us? They're going to want to do the right thing, and so the best advice I can give on something that's uncertain is do what's right for the spirit of the program. Like, if you stick to that, if you know what the purpose was, and the purpose was to keep people working and to keep their paychecks flowing, then you're going to probably be all right.
Yeah.
If you start to try to find ways to manipulate and all that,
work the system.
right? It may be perfectly legal, may be perfectly fine. It might be a shrewd move, but just know, just because there isn't a rule yet, doesn't mean that come payment time there isn't going to be a rule that they say, hey, no CEO, no owners that own X percent of the business can take money out. You don't know that that's going to happen. So, so what I say is, look, if you want to give hazard pay to your employees, maybe they've had lost fund, $500 for an employee. That hasn't been clearly outlined whether that's going to be allowed or not, to have these little bonuses thrown. It's going to be allowed because why? Everybody's lost money. Tipped employees have lost money.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean about staying within the spirit. If you know that this is to retain and keep people employed and keep rents being paid and children being supported, you're probably safe. If you start to try to figure out ways of how can the business make more money on this or something like that, then you may not be safe. So anyway, those are the biggest things by far for us that we've been answering, is reactions and consequences based on these programs.
Gotcha. So let's go on at a different angle for you.
Okay.
You got Perfect Plain up front, Garden and Grand here, and you have a brand new project, The Well.
Yeah.
Not really brand new anymore, but you guys are moving ground in there.
Yeah.
How's this affected you?
Well, I think I mentioned, I've been telling everybody who asks how we're doing, I say it's the epitome of glass half full and glass half empty. And what I mean is, I think after the first week of being shut down, we're at about half of what our normal revenue would be. The margin's certainly different. We're having to can everything. We're having to bottle everything. It certainly takes more labor and more people to kind of manufacture this newfound, business model.
Yeah.
But I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about how can we get our employees tipped? How can we, the more revenue we bring in, the more the employees are supported. So as I say, it's glass half full, glass half empty. You can look at it and say, man, we're at half sales, this stinks. Or you can look at it and be like, man, I'm so grateful for this community and everything, and the great messages we get, and people leaving big tips when they come and buy some beer because they want to support our staff. How grateful I am for that. We haven't had to lay anybody off. We've kept everybody on. Our bartenders are, still, obviously they're not making what they're making. Nobody is. All from the top down, nobody, and I'm sure that goes for every bar and brewery and restaurant. But they've been fighting and keeping good attitudes, and, so I'm just blessed to have such a great team. And so at the end of the day, I'm thankful we have this opportunity. We're considered an essential business as long as it continues to be safe enough, and we've taken a lot of precautions out there and, changed the way, everybody's wearing masks, everybody's switching out gloves. We're as contactless as possible. Same with delivery. We're just dropping it on the curb. We're taking your payment ahead of time. We're trying to be as respectful of everybody's space, of course, as we can. So all in all, in knowing what's out there and how other places are suffering, the last thing I could ever do is complain about where we are. And really, it just motivates me more to, think about nonprofits that had fundraisers that, during this time is a lot of times 1 or 2 fundraisers for a nonprofit. Their life. Yeah, that's their lifeblood. Fortunately, 501c3s qualify for some of these programs, especially right now, and potentially C4s and all that hasn't come out yet. But there's so many people being impacted that can have to shut their. I use hair, nails. What do you do? There isn't a to-go. There isn't a contactless option, and so there's so many other people in other industries, hotels, suffering greatly right now. And what do? You can't clean rooms that aren't being used. You can't, cook steaks at the hotel lobby for no guests. So, what do? You have no other option but to lay people off and really suffer. So, so as I said, I'm thankful even for what we are getting, and it just makes me extra motivated to do this and to have as much outreach as we can to keep these businesses around and alive. We are going to come back from this, and we are going to have this great boom as people start to feel more and more comfortable, and people are going to be dying to get away from their families and go on vacation. We do know that. So that time will come. It's just we got to keep fighting and keep supporting each other and helping each other through this. And every tip there is and every piece of advice and what you guys are doing, listening to an old podcast and how somebody runs a business. I mean, that can make the difference of staying open and not right now. And so what you guys are doing is great, and what we're trying to do with the spring, we hope has been super helpful to people out there. And we'll keep grinding as long as we can.
I guess one line item that you'll never see sitting down with your accountant is that emotional, the emotional value of of a company. And I mean, from my perspective and what I've seen on social media and word of mouth and what Perfect Plain is doing, not only for the community but for your employees, where did that rank when everything came out, when you were given the stay-at-home order, when you had that oh shit moment? Where
Right.
did your employees, that emotional connection to your business rank?
Yeah, so we were sitting in here when really the big one was when bars and restaurants closing was obviously when they said they were going to close for 30 days. And, what we said to our staff, we really not knowing, was we just said, look, as I keep telling them, it's like they fight for us every day with a great attitude every day. Like I'm going to do everything I can to keep people employed and rents paid and keep our people supported. What I think about, and this has been brought up from some other folks I know, is that, how, as an owner of a business and as a CEO of a company, everybody's going to remember this for the rest of their lives. Everybody's going to remember what happened. Everybody's going to remember what happened to them, what happened to their job, what happened. And I'm not knocking anybody that's had to lay anybody off. I mean, you've got to survive. That is business. Totally understand that. And there are plenty of cases where it's absolutely, of course, justified. I'll tell you right now, our payroll at Perfect Plain versus revenue is probably at 40%. And if I can tell you, any business person would tell you, if you're over 24% in that, you're unsustainable. You're going out of business at over 24%, unless you just have some product that has some ridiculous margin on it. And craft beer has a good margin on it, and so you don't really want to be over that. We're at 40. We know this isn't going to be forever, but as I said, I want to look back on this and say, and I want certainly our staff and our community. Let's make hand sanitizer. We've raised about $5,000 on Say Pensacola Beer shirts that we've already got a couple people that have reached out to us that we're going to be able to support with a check. I mean, just cash, help pay rent, help feed a child, those kinds of things. And that's why we did that. So we're at about $5,000 and counting in that account. Anybody out there that's in craft beer that knows anybody, make sure you email me or reach out to me on Instagram or something. And it's all confidential. There's no forms. There's no, we're just trying to support local craft beer people that are down on their luck right now. But how do you want to be remembered as an employee? How do you want to be remembered as a CEO of a company or a manager? And how do you want to be remembered as an owner of a company? How did you react? Any owner right now can look at their balance sheet and say, some bigger than others, some more justified than others, and say, my payroll's at 40%. I've got to cut payroll. That's unhealthy. But then you add the people factor, and you add the emotional factor, and that laying off somebody that's maybe not essential and that's part-time. Well, that's an easy thing to do, but they're valuable, and these are people that are paying rents and all that stuff. So will I remember the couple $1,000s I saved, because for the shrewd, understandable business move, or will I remember that, so it sounds kind of crazy, but I'm in competition with myself to want to keep every single person on and get them whole, even money that they've lost in tips. Like that's what's kind of driving me is how can we where nobody really had to suffer anything and we were there for our staff.
And they'll forever remember how you made them feel or how the company they worked for helped support them.
Right, and employee engagement is so important to us in how we practice it, and employee engagement surveys and all those different things. This is no different. This is another employee engagement opportunity. So you're right, the line item, in my mind, you can't put a number on it, but there is a line item that I think every business owner should consider is, the well-being of the people that work for them and that come to work every day. And so honestly, I'm lucky enough to reap the benefits of having good employee engagement because I got bartenders in there fighting every day with an awesome attitude, not complaining because the paycheck wasn't as big, tips weren't as big. They're happy. It seems like they're even closer now than they were before. Not physically, still 6 feet. Right. But what I'm saying is that I'm so thankful to now. When you have a staff that cares about each other and keeps each other accountable and all those things, these are the times that it's so valuable as an owner too. And so a good reminder for people out there, even as we get through this, of why putting in those things and having outings with your staff and tracking employee engagement, see if there's any weak spots for you, some blind spots for your company, and make sure you're treating them well. And we are not perfect. I am not perfect at all at that. We do the best we can. And so emotional factor is unequivocally something that's important when it comes to, and it's something that before you make that decision, and before you say, can we afford this, think about those other people. And I know there's so many people out there. That's what's cool about this small business community. There's so many people out there that we are not unique in this thinking. We are not special in this thinking. That there are a ton of people out there keeping people on staff, even when they don't have to, and they have a perfectly good reason not to. And I mean, I can think of 10 people off the top of my head right now that are doing the same thing or helping give money even when they don't need to. So, it's really showing, and I hope customers and consumers out there are paying attention to that too. Of who are those businesses stepping up for our community and for their staff, when it counts, when it was hard to do. So.
And the way you keep your employees and support them is by pivoting your business to, produce sales. And you guys do a great job on social media. And you've been, since day one, you guys have been pivoting, and you went from, closing your doors to, handing out the bottles, producing the hand sanitizer, making the shirts, all of these things to where you're pivoting and trying to create revenue. What's next on the agenda for pivoting? I know we talked about it a little bit before. Yeah, I mean, delivery's kind of started, and that's been a gray area for, what's allowed, what isn't. We feel we have to have what's in the best interest for this staff. That's what I say. Is that, the health of keeping staff, making something close to, and being able to support and pay rent and support their families. So, if it's a gray area right now, I feel like, the truth is on our side, and the fact that, so can breweries deliver? Can they not deliver? There's about 30 in Florida that are doing it right now, and have been for a long time. There's a little ambiguity on what that permit is. We understand that. We certainly understand if somebody called us and said, hey, you've got to stop doing that. I get it. We've actually had people calling about us doing that, which is crazy, but it doesn't really affect them. Anybody can do it. But point is, I'm going to do what's in the best interest of helping the people that fight for this company every day. And if we have to stop, we'll stop. But that's my first priority right now. I'm not going to do anything illegal. We're not going to, start selling pot out front of the Perfect Plain or anything. But if that's an avenue that can help that driver get a tip that didn't exist before, right now, I think, I think anybody with logic will understand that doing the right thing is on the side of trying to support staff. That's what we're all trying to do, is stay afloat. So we've been doing that. As far we still have some hand sanitizer we're donating. We've been working with the Pensacola Police Department with getting them, continuing to provide them. They are on longer shifts. Having to deal with a lot of different things as a first responder, dealing with some hospitals. So a lot of home health care people are reaching out to us who are dealing with senior citizens, and getting them bottles as best we can, and we're donating those, what little we have. Our bottleneck
no pun intended, is bottles right now. It's not liquid. That's starting to become easier and easier to find. It's what to put it in. So we're kind of at a standstill on that right now of exactly how we're going to incorporate it, but keep checking our social media if you want to. Right now we're putting out, it's 1 bottle per person. I think we're putting about 50 bottles a day out for suggested donation. So for the rest, at least probably this week and next week. But again, we'll keep updating that on social media. So I keep saying community is not a one-way street. I think a lot of people say, hey, we're a community-based brewery or we're community-based anything. And you say that because you want the community to come in and buy your stuff.
Right.
You know, community-based means you got to do things too. You know, when it's not easy or not in your best financial interest or anything. And again, so many companies around here are doing that. We are not unique in that, but you know, that was kind of the challenge in my mind, was to say, like, what can we be doing, you know, to help our community, not just sit back and say, wait, help this little small business come buy beer from us. We feel that way, but we also want to be doing something too. We want to hand sanitizer and help support our craft beer community in any way that we can. So, and again, so many other great companies, great small businesses, bars and restaurants, donating food to first responders. You know, I mean, there's so many different examples of that out there. We're just one of those examples, but you know, there's so it is really kind of cool. This sucks for everybody. But it is kind of cool to see, you know, the heart and the soul of certain businesses come out and say, like, how do we support each other and how do we support, you know, first responders and whoever in their time of need.
Yeah.
So,
and before we go on further, just want to reiterate to everyone that, you know, we're recording right now, April 9th. We're going to be putting this out tomorrow, April 10th. And I just wanted to say that because let's talk about everything that you have coming up with this spring for all your online
Okay,
streams.
Great. So we have with our partnership with Generator, the accelerator company based out of Milwaukee, we've been doing an emergency response program. So we've already had 2 of those. Those are on the springpensacola.com. One is with a national law firm on some of these loans. The second one was a lot of FAQs with an accountant from Warren Averett, Brandon Crosby, and I kind of batted back and forth. If you are, when we talked about earlier, if you're those sole proprietors, 1099s, those kinds of things, we took a real deep dive on PPP and some of those questions. We got a bunch. We couldn't even answer them all. So make sure you watch that. That is posted on the springpensacola.com. And then today, April 10th at noon, Quint is doing a really good one about, you know, what can you do with this time and how do you come back even stronger, you know, as an organization. That would be great for any owner, any leader out there to watch that. Will be, if you are listening to this later, it will be the same thing. All of these will be available at the springpensacola.com on our COVID-19 resource page. It's the first thing you see when you go to our website, right at the top.
Very top.
Yeah, very top. So easy to find. And then we're going to do one on health and wellness that the Generator folks have brought a national expert on. And that's obviously something to take pretty seriously right now with a lot of stress and anxiety. And lastly will be another update on PPP, and that will be on Thursday. So that would be Tuesday, I'm challenging myself with these dates here. I believe Tuesday the 14th and Thursday the 16th. It's the Tuesday and Thursday at noon. So all of these are completely free. All you've got to do is register. And again, if you miss them or noon's not a good time for you, we will have them recorded. And there's so many great people putting out content. Cedar Community Institute Training and Development, they're putting out content much like ours. SBDC is doing a great job of having webinars. And what's really cool in that Generator program, if you look and go to our website and look at that, their Generator, and again, this is a nationally renowned accelerator program. They're offering one-on-one office hours with companies that you can get in a time slot, 2:30 on Thursday, and you can work with one of them directly on helping answer some of your questions. We're doing that at the local level, of course, too, but it's not that structured. You're emailing in, and we're kind of getting back with you, but at this moment. So, yeah, they are doing a really great job of helping support our community. So make sure you take advantage of all this stuff. I mean, it's a great resource now. People have got time to sit down and just think about it. This is the difference between potentially tens of thousands of dollars. This is not busy work. This is like the difference in survival in a business, the difference of getting out less scathed than you got into this,
Yeah.
or you would have been otherwise. So cannot stress it enough to make sure you're paying attention to these programs. Watch these webinars. Ours, I don't care if you watch ours or not. Watch any of these webinars about these programs. Exactly. Do something. This is not the time to be like resting on your laurels. And again, that's why I thank you guys for this opportunity to really more as a representative of the spring today to say, to encourage businesses to reach out to us. info@thespringpensacola.com. This goes an email, that sends me an email directly on, if you got a question out there, any of that stuff. This is the time, and same thing. I didn't want to rest on my laurels as somebody representing the spring and not do everything I can to get the word out to every small business. And that could be the difference of one company staying here and employing people in our community. And so we'll keep fighting the same way Perfect Plain's fighting. At the spring, we're fighting to get this information, this news, this help in every hand we can. And you guys obviously are a big part of that. So thank you for letting us do that and giving us the opportunity to reach out to y'all's great fan base. So.
Yeah, sweet. I think that pretty much sums it up for today.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me.